Hello, my wonderful, wonderful friends. Welcome back to our ProRevenge, where many of you come to get your dose of satisfaction by listening to others getting what they deserve. Guys, I hope you're having a lovely day today, wherever you are, and guess what? It's about to get even better. In this episode of our ProRevenge, you'll hear 5 juicy stories. The first, OP's girlfriend steals money from him and then denies it, and goes completely psycho when he accuses her with proof of receipts. The second story is why you should never steal someone's pants because it might land you in jail. Well, that's if you're messing with the wrong person, like OP. Guys, I do hope you stay for the stories today and hit that subscribe button for future revenge stories. Let's dive in, shall we? This first story is titled, Fairly Aggressive Girlfriend Stole from My Bank Account, so I sent her academic career into a nosedive. I'm a senior at a large state university. This happened in the first semester of my freshman year. I was selected for an honors-type program that placed me in a co-ed dorm building with every other student in the program. As a dumb freshman, I rushed into a relationship with a freshman girl who lived right above me. We'll call her Megan. It was convenient for me to date someone who lived close, but everyone in our building hated Megan because she talked a lot and almost exclusively about herself. She bragged often about being a fairly aggressive person, but somehow I overlooked that mile-wide red flag. Right after Thanksgiving break, at the end of an evening class, I got a call from my mom, who noticed some unusual activity on my checking account. Back then, I had no credit card, so this debit card was my only access to my savings while I lived on campus. I rarely needed to buy anything during the semester, so I was puzzled to find that $104.29 had left my bank account over 2 weeks in the form of 6 Grubhub food orders. At this point, I trusted Megan but decided to ask her about the money right away. She denied involvement and suggested that I cancel my debit card. After a really long phone call to the bank, I did just that. Next, I reached out to Grubhub's customer service and said, "Hey, my card was stolen and used for food orders on these dates. Can I have the receipts?" They sent me the first and last receipts, but they had to redact the personal info of the account holder. I say redact in quotes because they just used the Snapchat draw tool, and Megan's name was still clearly visible on both receipts. What's more, the most recent receipt was only 2 hours old. She was probably still eating when I chopped up my debit card. It's worth noting that she and I had unlimited dining plans paid for by our respective parents, and we lived 500 feet from the nearest dining hall. She did not need to order food, and she definitely did not need my money to do it. So, I texted her again and said, "I have the receipts from Grubhub. Are you sure you didn't make those orders?" Her reply was, "Screw you for suspecting me." Fairly aggressive, wouldn't you say? I hatched a plan to collect security camera footage of her picking up the order from that evening. However, by midnight, Megan arrived at my door in tears and confessed to everything. Plus, she admitted to being a serial shoplifter. Exhausted, I sent her away and decided to deal with everything in the morning. By the next day, everyone in our building seemed to know what was going down, probably because Megan had already begun broadcasting her version of the story. I sent Megan a breakup text and decided that the $104.29 was a loss. At least I escaped unscathed, right? Well, less than 2 days later, she entered my room when I wasn't looking. I was sitting at my desk when I noticed her standing silently behind me, and she says, "Give me my stuff." "Where's my stuff?" I asked. "What stuff?" she replied. "You know." I did not know. She tore through the room looking for something that she refused to identify. As quick as she came, she was gone, and I locked the door because obviously this wasn't over yet. Within a minute, she was back. She stood outside my door, knocking and demanding I let her inside. The knocking quickly got more violent and she started shouting, "Open the mother-freaking door!" Mind you, we lived in this building with students in our program who all know each other, and all of them could hear her pretty quickly. Megan was rattling the handle of my door. She then began throwing herself at it shoulder first, trying to break it down. I lived next door to my RA, but judging by the lack of intervention, he was elsewhere. So I whipped out my phone and texted him to come now. My RA was on duty in another building, so he sent 3 of his colleagues to de-escalate the situation. They brought Megan downstairs, where she revealed that the stuff she wanted was just a t-shirt and keychain that she gave me for my birthday. She caused the ruckus over that? Whatever, I let her have those. I still wanted this to be over. However, once I shared my story with the resident life staff, they filed university paperwork to place a no-contact order between me and Megan. They also recommended that I contact the campus police, who then told me that I should get my stolen money back in small claims court. At the request of the campus police, I also contacted the Title IX office at my school, sending them the story of everything you've read so far. They were interested, to say the least. Although I didn't want any trouble, I just wanted a clean breakup and a fresh start. A Title IX representative told me that they were bringing 3 misconduct charges against Megan: theft, threatening and violent behavior, and inciting an intervention by university staff. The representative asked me to serve as a witness in Megan's disciplinary hearing the next semester. When the day of the hearing finally arrived, the no-contact order was still in effect, but a few of my friends had kept tabs on Megan. Megan kept telling a twisted version of the whole story to try to turn my friends against me. I arrived alone at the board office, unsure of what to expect. The board consisted of grad students, and the hearing was expected to run into the night. Unlike me, Megan did not come alone. She brought both of her parents as character witnesses. That wasn't even a thing here, as this was not a real courtroom, as you'll soon see. And that's not all. Megan's parents also paid a lawyer to defend her against the charges. They brought a lawyer. The board knew that was unnecessary, but Megan's parents believed so strongly in their daughter's innocence that they already paid this 3-piece suit-wearing lawyer to make her case. In the name of fairness, the board members offered me a pro bono legal representation, a junior economics major who we'll call Jimmy. Jimmy had already read my account of the events from the fall, and thanks to my screenshots of the Grubhub receipts, he said that there was an okay shot of the charges sticking. I then told him something I'd kept secret for months. When Megan tried to break down my door and I whipped out my phone to text my RA, I also filmed the whole thing on my cell phone. Jimmy could not get enough of the video. It was just a video of my door, but the audio is what was important. There was Megan screaming and banging against the door and clearly trying to break into my dorm room. It was all the evidence I needed, and no one saw it coming. In the hearing, when the time came for me to make my case against Megan, Jimmy played the video on a big screen in front of everyone. The room went insane. In that instant, I realized that Megan had really convinced everyone that I was the liar. In her version of the story, I gave her permission to buy food using my account. She told her parents that she'd ask me politely for her belongings, which I'd rudely hidden from her in my dorm room. In Megan's story, I was the sociopath trying to ruin her reputation. Before I unveiled the video, it was her word against mine. If there was no video, there may have been a good chance that I would have lost this fight. I saw her parents flipping out at the video saying, "Why didn't you tell us you did this?" And her lawyer raising hell saying, "This evidence was not provided in pre-trial disclosure." A board member stands over the lawyer and says, "Sir, this is not a court of law. Please return to your seat." And him shouting, "Objection!" And her replying, "Sir, we don't have objections. This isn't a court of law." Jimmy and I just sat there, just trying not to laugh out loud. And that's when I realized how good revenge can feel when it's fair and deserved. The board found Megan responsible on all 3 charges. My side of the bench recommended the university terminate her housing contract and force her to pay restitution. Her side recommended only restitution and a reprimand. The board compromised. Her family paid back most of the money she stole, and I say most because 2 of the 6 orders had the same price, and the lawyer convinced the board that I had duplicated an order, and Megan was forced to move into a different dorm building. This probably wouldn't have helped her anyway, because every student in our programs building knew everything she'd done and lied about. They wouldn't speak to her, and no one wanted to be her roommate. By the time she had to move buildings, she'd already failed all of her courses. Again, having paid for her tuition, her unused dining plan, her lawyer, and her restitution, Megan's parents finally pulled her out of school. And where are they now? Last I heard, Megan returned as a part-time student, but I never saw her again because the no-contact order still stands. I no longer date fairly aggressive people. Oh my goodness, that part where OP reveals the recording of his girlfriend body-checking the door was so satisfying. I can only imagine her face and her parents' face during the hearing when OP was like, "But wait, I have video proof that your daughter is a freaking psycho." Oh my goodness, what a satisfying story. This next story is titled, "Destroy My Clothes, Enjoy Your Time in Jail." So, this happened when I was 14 or 15. My mother was married to a man who had an adult son from a previous marriage. I think he was in his mid-20s. He lived the hippie life, literally on the streets by choice, and about once a year or so, he would hitchhike his way to our house with his friends, do copious amounts of laundry and weed, and generally just take over as if it was their house. Anyhow, like any teenage girl, I was obsessed with my clothes. I had laundry sitting in the dryer, including these awesome corduroy pants that I had only worn once. Stepbro and friends are doing laundry, and instead of doing something normal like moving my stuff aside or putting it in my room, they decide, oh man, it would be so dope to cut these up and make a sweet cape. So, that's what they did. I saw my stepbrother wearing this cape and recognized the material and said, "Are those my pants?" He replied, "Yeah, they were in the laundry, man. You know, like finders keepers." I was furious, and his dad wouldn't do anything about it. My mom was pissed because she had just bought these for me and they were pricey. I wanted to get back at my stepbrother, but he had nothing of value because of his lifestyle. I then remembered I overheard my parents fighting, and my mom had mentioned that my stepbrother had got a girl pregnant and the kid was like 2 years old and he hadn't so much as given the girl a penny or even seen the child since it was born. So the next day my parents were at work. My stepbrother's hanging out, listening to music or something, and I decide to call the cops. I wasn't sure what to say, but I told the dispatcher that I knew of someone who might have a warrant out for failure to pay child support. Now, before you say, how would a teenager know about that? Well, my birth father is a demon and was at one point nearly arrested for the same offense. The dispatcher asked for the name of the person. I gleefully gave my stepbrother's name, and they confirmed that there was in fact a warrant out for him. I gave my address, and I waited. 20 minutes later, cops roll up. They knock, and I let them in and lead them right to him and say, "He's right here, officers." I couldn't help smiling. They cuff him and take him off to jail. An hour later, my mom calls the house after my stepbrother had used his phone call to call his dad, and I tell her exactly what I did. She whispered, "Good job," but then pretended to loudly reprimand me as she was with stepdad. Stepdad could not get the fine and bail money together fast enough, so stepbrother had to sit in jail overnight. It still makes me happy 20 years later to remember seeing him being taken away in a cop car. My mom luckily divorced that guy and is now married to a very nice man. This next story is titled, Pay Me. This is actually my wife's story, but a few years ago, my wife had just landed a job as a dental assistant. She was picking things up quickly, as could be expected, and she got along with her CO workers great. However, right after starting, she was warned by her CO workers that the office manager was fire-happy. She had the tendency to fire people on a whim and try her luck hiring someone else, only to be dissatisfied with them and fire them as well. We naively thought that since my wife already had some experience as a dental assistant, she had a head start on any other new hire, and that she would be fine. Until just a few weeks in, and without any notice, she was fired for not picking things up quick enough. Whatever, we live in an at-will state and knew there wasn't much we could do, so we started looking for another job for her. However, we noticed after a week or two that her last check was never sent to us like they normally were. We texted the office manager asking if we should come pick it up, and instead we were told that the last check was already printed and sent off, and just to wait for it. We waited another week or so before finally emailing her, asking when we would get paid. She replied very curtly that there must have been some issue with the payroll and that she would fix it, and then she stopped replying. She ghosted us. Another few weeks went by with several emails and texts going unanswered by her before we finally asked my father-in-law, who's a lawyer, for some advice. He approached a colleague in the firm who specialized in employment law, and was informed of a very interesting law here in Utah that basically says if you haven't been paid after being fired, normal pay will resume once a written request for payment has been issued. So basically, my wife was due 8 hours of pay for every day after she sent her initial text wondering where the paycheck was. After a scary, litigious-sounding letter from my father-in-law informing them of this law, it came out that the last check had never even been printed, let alone sent, and that there was no accounting issue. The office manager just never planned on paying her for the last pay period, which was only 2 days, and this ended up costing the dental office over a month's worth of wages, almost $2,500. Guys, I absolutely love the revenge stories on shady people trying to save a few dollars, and then it ends up costing them like 10 times in the end. This also sounds like a very shady office manager and dental office, and I wonder how many people they've done this to before OP and his wife decided to take some action. I'm also very curious about the name of the dental office now. This next story is titled, For No Good Reason, Dad Was Dismissed. My dad had worked at the same company for almost 30 years before he was abruptly fired for a stupid reason. He was coordinating an upcoming meeting of people who had to fly in from around the country. One important participant resigned unexpectedly, so Dad canceled the meeting via email and explained why. Apparently, to the company, this counted as, quote, improperly communicating privileged information, and he was fired the next day. All this happened a week after Dad's boss retired and was replaced by a new guy who wanted to cut costs. What a coincidence. This was about 10 years ago, near the height of the recession. Dad was in his 50s, hadn't interviewed for a job since the early 1980s. He wasn't sure if he'd ever find another job. My mom went back to work at a school to pay the bills, while Dad scraped together what he could by doing some online consulting gigs for basically minimum wage. They managed to keep their heads above water, but only barely. Dad was out of work for a year and a half. He finally landed a job at a new company 3 states away, and coincidentally about an hour away from where my wife and I lived and were expecting Dad's first grandchild. Mom and Dad moved to live about 20 minutes away from us. They had paid off the mortgage on their house, so they decided to keep it and rent it out, planning to retire there in a few years. The new company treated Dad very well. He was getting paid much more than he made at the old company. He had good benefits and respect from his co-workers and superiors. A year later, Mom and Dad were able to buy a second, smaller house near their grandkids. Dad mentioned a few things about his time at the old company to his new bosses. Nothing confidential or anything, more like overall strengths and weaknesses. Of course, the story of how he got fired came out as well. It turns out when you work at a company for over 25 years, you learn a thing or two about how it works, and, quote, cutting costs by firing experienced employees can make your company very vulnerable. New companies started to get very interested. They saw an important business opportunity and also a chance to get revenge on behalf of a valued employee. A couple of years later, new company bought old company. They were both big companies, and mergers of this size take time. But when the dust settled, it was clear that there were redundancies in divisions and products that both companies had, that new company only needed one of. They kept as many of old company's people as they could, and very few people lost their jobs, except, of course, for the bosses responsible for firing Dad. New company put Dad in charge of the building he used to work in at the old company and let him choose his employees from both old and new companies. Dad had to move back to the old state, so new company helped sell his house in the new state and gave him a moving stipend of several $1,000s. Mom and Dad were just moving back into their own house. They sold their new house for a nice profit, and with that money plus the moving stipend, they paid off debts, saved for retirement, and took me, my siblings, our spouses, and the grandkids on a nice cruise. Some say living well is the best revenge, my friends, but OP's dad lived well and had the guy who fired him fired as well. The only thing that would have made this revenge sweeter is if OP's dad was put in charge of the department that the bosses worked in, and then he got to fire them. So OP has an update to the story, and it reads, since people are asking, I never heard exactly what transpired when the guy who fired Dad got downsized, but since it's Christmas and we all get together, I'm actually able to ask him. And Dad wouldn't say. Exit interviews are supposed to stay private. I told him about this post with all the names left out, and the people wanted to know. He just grinned and said that would be improperly communicating privileged information. This next story is titled, My Ex Unjustly Accused Me. In late May 2016, I asked my crush Kate of 3 years out on a coffee date. 3 days later, we made things official. For the next 7 months, our relationship felt too good to be true. We clicked on so many interests, so we hardly ever disagreed on anything. We were also very open with each other, which led to an incredible sex life. We both had good jobs too, so we had money to spoil one another, and our families were both enthusiastic about the relationship. In January of 2017, I was accepted into my country's Armed Forces Reserve program as a combat engineer. I underwent basic training from February to late April, and it was up until then the hardest thing I've ever done. There were several times that I thought I wouldn't graduate, and the only thing that kept me going was Kate's words of encouragement over the text and calls. She was there when I received my BTC certificates and never let me forget how proud she was of me. As part of my job in the reserves, I would have to go away in the summer for advanced training between early June to late August. Kate fully supported me going 400 kilometers away to the training center and spending almost our entire summer break on work to further my military career. The summer took its toll on me. I was a social outcast from every clique that formed in our course and was the butt end of several jokes. My self-esteem plummeted through the floor, but Kate's belief in me was what made me prevail. I passed as 5th best on the course, and I owed it all to her. So the decline, things between us, started to get sour after returning home. According to her, I wasn't as spontaneous and outgoing as I was before I went away. I was dismissive, I took small jabs and jokes as personal insults, and would rather stay in, watch movies, and have sex instead of going out. Unbeknownst to both of us, I had developed some nasty social anxiety due to the events of the summer, and it started to affect our relationship. Nearing our 2-year anniversary in 2018, we got into a heated argument over a small misunderstanding and subsequently broke up. I was incredibly distraught. She texted me 3 days later and said she wanted to try to fix things. I didn't see her for 3 weeks, but we kept in touch every day, slowly mending things. When we officially got back together, nothing felt the same. Every time I talked with her, it was as if I was walking on eggshells, and it only worsened my anxiety, which in turn made our already damaged relationship worse. Things finally came to a head at the end of July. So the hurt. While I was in school, Kate had met a dude named John. She saw in John what she used to see in me, and they quickly became very close friends. He consoled her through our breakup and every little time I messed up afterwards. For the record, I knew of John but never thought Kate would ever do anything with him. One night after work, we planned for me to stay the night at Kate's place. I arrived to see the two of them chilling on the living room couch. Kate said that John had dropped by for a spontaneous visit and he was just leaving. After John left, she became cold and distant. I slowly accepted that our relationship was dead and asked her how things were between us. She echoed my thoughts and agreed that we break up. The next day, she said I could stay the night one last time, seeing how it was late and she was still worried and cared for me. From there on until she fell asleep, Kate became uncharacteristically glued to and protective of her phone. In the past, she wouldn't care if I glanced over to catch her and her friends texting about whatever, but now she did her best to hide the screen from me. I asked her about it, and she said it was private stuff, which only raised more questions. After she fell asleep, curiosity got the best of me. I unlocked her phone since I knew her passcode, and found hundreds of messages between her and John. Messages about how she was single, how exciting it was that they could now be a couple in public, and laughing at me for every little thing I did. I quietly sobbed as I read through each hurtful text. My crying wasn't as quiet as I thought. Kate stirred, and once she realized what I was doing, she threw a fit. I couldn't find the anger or words to combat her, so I just grabbed my stuff and left, with Kate shouting and yelling at me the whole time. It was late in the morning when I got home, and I just broke down and cried all night. I called in sick from work the next day and just spent it sulking in my bed. The day after, I got several angry texts from Kate's friends and family. In a bid to save her image and denounce everything I might say about her, she told everyone she knew that I had forced myself upon her that night in one last attempt to get some before we broke up, and I left her after the deed was done. Even though what I had done was, quote, scarring, she refused to press charges because, quote, she did not want to make a circus of her life in court, and she was the bigger person by doing so. I spent the next few months in fear that her allegation would have me discharged from the army and my image forever tarnished, but nothing ever happened. So the revenge. 5 months afterwards, Kate DM'd me. After pleasantries, she basically apologized for the whole thing and actually admitted to faking it, though she would never publicly admit it to save her own reputation. This angered me, but I kept cool, and over the next 3 months, she entered into a cycle of events as follows. She would complain about a current life situation, usually about John messing up their relationship in one way or another, and asking for advice, lamenting about our relationship, how I never messed up like John did, how she wished we could go back to the way things were, blah blah blah, ignoring me because John finally pulled his head out of his rear and did some huge romantic gesture and saved their relationship. Going on a smear campaign on social media about our relationship, employing her friends for help, knowing full well that I would see it and trying to bait me into an argument. This happened 3 times like clockwork and always left me burnt out and broken, but a part of me wanted it to happen each time it did. I took screenshots of every darn thing she said. I had a full SD card of everything I compiled before I finally decided it was time. Making several picture copies of the worst and worst text messages I caught, I bought several manila envelopes and mailed them to everyone I thought would matter to Kate. Her parents, grandparents, extended family she was super close with, best friends, work boss, co-workers, teachers, whoever I could find a mailing address for. I made sure anyone getting the envelope would know that the texts were between me and Kate and sent them off. Within 3 weeks, I got results. Some of the people who messaged me to shame me and insult me before now apologized for their words. My favorite was from her own parents, who went on to say that they were deeply sorry about their daughter's behavior, how they raised her to be better than how she acted, and to please not pursue any legal actions. I told them I'd think about it, and they'd be the first to know besides Kate if I did. Kate sent me some texts as well, with things like, "How could you betray my trust like that, or you ruined my life, you jerk?" I didn't reply. I just read every angry text that flew in with a satisfied grin and then blocked her when they stopped. I never fully found out how bad her life was affected by my revenge, but I do know that she dropped out of school and no longer has a job. I hope John was worth it. To think that if OP just left her phone alone, none of this would have happened. You know, that's saying that curiosity killed the cat. It could have gone a lot worse for OP if Kate went full-blown psycho and decided to go to the cops with that accusation and really put OP in the spotlight. These stories left an impression on me, so here's my viewpoint. The fairly aggressive girlfriend stole from my bank account story is a wild ride of betrayal and sweet justice. I admire OP's restraint initially, letting the theft slide for a clean break, but Megan's door-smashing meltdown? Unhinged. Bringing video to the Title IX hearing was genius. Watching her lawyer flop in that kangaroo court had me grinning. She deserved the fallout. Failing classes, moving dorms and dropping out. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Destroy my clothes. Enjoy your time in jail is petty revenge done right. I feel OP's rage over those ruined pants. Hippies thinking finders keepers on private property? Absurd. Calling cops on the stepbrother's child support warrant was clever. Overnight in jail taught him consequences. Kudos to the mom for whispering good job. Family drama resolved with a satisfying arrest. Pay me. Highlights workplace pettiness backfiring hilariously. I love how the wife's stupid reason firing led to a law exploiting the delayed paycheck, costing the office $2,500. Ghosting on wages? Shady. The father-in-law's letter was the mic drop. Proves never underestimate legal loopholes. For no good reason, Dad was dismissed. Is corporate karma at its finest. I respect Dad's resilience post-firing, landing a better job, then his new company buying the old one and axing the cost cutter. Poetic. Profiting from house flips and a family cruise sealed the win. Living well plus revenge? Chef's kiss? My ex unjustly accused me. Broke my heart, then fueled my rage. Kate's cheating and false assault claim? Vile manipulation. I applaud OP compiling those texts and mailing them out. Exposing her lies to family and friends ruined her rep, leading to dropout and job loss. Curiosity didn't kill the cat, it avenged it. Stay strong, OP, truth prevails. And that wraps up another episode of our ProRevenge. If you missed the last episode of our /ProRevenge, go check it out, give it a listen to, and I'll see you guys in the next one.